Honestly unbalanced.
Collective suffering. Okay, now what I mean by that, we're not going dark. We're not going dark.
God,
But
it's
what I
gone
mean is
heavy.
there is lots of growth I've always found by doing something hard, like marathons, ice baths, etc. You grow yourself, you learn a lot about yourself in those situations. And we had a guy called Cold Plunge Cam on, who's like an ice bather and a mental health advocate.
Hmm.
And he highlighted this idea of actually doing something together is really good for building community, like doing something that is horrible and hard that actually none of you want to do. And
Yeah.
I'd never really considered that before. And I guess you are bringing women mainly together, doing something that actually no one really wants to do. So I just wondered if you could talk
Oh,
about
that's
how,
interesting perspective.
well, yeah, well, how does that, how does the suffering and the hate and the anger bring people together?
Well, I actually, a big part of my business Rise Fierce is about taking women cold water swimming. But I really think um a big part of it for me is finding play and joy in it. So although we're going into cold water and the mindset might be, I don't want to go in cold water, it's January, blah blah blah. Someone in my front garden. For me, I really emphasize the play. So we're playing in the waves and we're just trying to have fun and a good time. So hopefully people don't come to hang out with me and feel like they're suffering.
But
Maybe they do.
I imagine a lot of the people that come to you for the first time, they are panicked to
Oh
some
yeah.
degree. So they're even if maybe time four, five, six, there's no expectation of suffering. The first few
Yeah.
times they will be thinking, "Oh my God!" Like even me now, like I've got an ice bath with a chiller attached to it, so it's consistently cold,
Yeah.
and I do everything I can to avoid it. Procrastinate as much as I can to delay getting in. I think about 10 times this morning so far I should have got in. So there is this inherent like I don't want to do it because it hurts, etc. Uh, and yeah, well, how do you persuade people to do it to get in for the first time? What's your tactic?
How do I? I mean, I don't think too much pressure is a good thing, but I have women come on retreats who on the first day they are terrified and they might just watch and not get wet, and then the second day they might put their toes in, but I guarantee you by day 3 or 4 they'll be naked under a full moon diving off of a pier. So I don't know. I think for me it's about making it fun, and it is hard, and I do think that doing the hard thing together is part of what then opens people up, and like it really does help create community and help, I like to think women leave feeling empowered after the experience, and I think that is part of it. You realize that you can do something really challenging that you didn't think you could do.
Mm. And I think that's where the magic is, isn't it? That's where the
Hmm.
magic is. And then the collective support of each other, I think, is wonderful. And you get that a lot in CrossFit gyms.
Yeah.
They like chanting for each other, and the person who's at the end, everyone cheers for, which I would
Yeah.
hate. If I was the last person, I would hate everyone watching me and cheering for me. But that is a thing that does build community. Now,
Yeah.
you talk there about empowerment, and you've obviously got skills and knowledge regards cold water and swimming and a background of surfing. But what are there other skills you've tried to cultivate to enable you to hold that kind of space of growth and emotion and the like?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a lifetime journey. Like I hold women's circles as part of all the events I do, and that definitely does involve kind of a different um, level or mindset of like emotional intelligence. And I've all kinds of things. I've been into lots of women's circles myself. When I used to live in Ireland, I used to go to these what were they called? Non-violent communication workshops. Have you
Mm,
heard of that? Yeah.
I'm
So
bad at that. I'm quite violent in my communication style.
well, a lot of it's about conflict being a good thing and like conflict resolution. And without conflict, there's no growth. But yeah, I think a lot of it is just, it comes from community. So I'm not a therapist, I'm not hosting a women's circle to sit there and be like psychotherapist. It's community support. So I'm actually kind of just facilitating the space for everyone to share and listen and be heard and support each other.
I, I'm intrigued on that note because, of course, it's important to acknowledge the scope of our role and
Hmm.
training. Like I always say in yoga classes, like
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physio, and if I was a physio, this isn't how I would physio you in a class full of 40 people. But that interest, I'm always scared though, to some degree, of even on retreats, like getting too emotional and the like. I'm
Hmm.
like, do I have the space? and capacities to deal with anything that might come up.
Yeah.
So I do, facilitate self-inquiry. And I've always been tempted to look into like men's circles. And my wife had a dream about me leading men's circles whilst playing a drum of some kind. So maybe that is my calling
Yeah.
at some point. But I'm kind of scared of like, I think to some degree the people that are attracted to that, much as the people who are attracted to yoga in the back in the day, people that have some stuff going on.
Yeah.
And so stuff is
And
likely to come out.
I've definitely experienced that. I think on the first couple of retreats I held, and when they're longer and you're with people for 3 or 4 days, it can get quite deep, and it has been a learning for me. And most of the events I run now, since I've had a child, are day events, so we're only having one or two short circles. So it's we are going less deep, but I think a lot of that's to do with the prompts that I would use in a circle. And I always keep a few jokes in my back pocket that I can throw out to like lighten the mood and bring it back up. Yeah. And also this isn't probably something I should say on a yoga podcast, but I'm kind of anti woo woo. Like there's no woo woo ness about my circles. Part of the whole
ditto.
I really part of my whole vibe is sort of just being really accessible for everyone. I want your mum to feel like she could come along, and whoever, just anybody to come along and feel happy to sit in a circle and talk. And the same with the cold water, and the same when I teach yoga. I don't want anyone to feel like they're not welcome in that space. And I've been to lots of women's circles where you're blessed with have your aura cleansed with an eagle feather, and you're smudged and blessed, and there's a time and a space for all of that, and in its right use it's great, but that's not what I'm doing.
I think you don't need to meet everyone. Like if every woman's circle involved sage and drums, which nothing wrong with that.
No,
but if every single one involved that, then a huge spectrum of society would never actually open up. Like a huge spectrum of women would never open up to other women and come to a women's circle. Much like with a yoga class. If every yoga class looked like a dance class, which some do, or if every yoga class started with a 40-minute kirtan and then strong heavy assists, like so many people would never even try yoga in the first place.
Exactly. And I get imposter syndrome as a teacher to teach yoga, and I was actually thinking this morning I'm just going to rebrand my classes like Stretch and Breathe, because I don't want people to feel, is that my laptop pinging or yours? I don't want people to feel like they can't come to yoga because they're not yoga enough. I can't touch my toes. I've never been able to touch my toes.
What, are you a yang on? You're a yoga teacher?
Yeah.
Leave. Get out.
Get out. And I have exactly the same philosophy when teaching yoga. Is I just want it to be really accessible and everyone to feel really welcome. And you don't need to know the Sanskrit names, and you don't need to know the chants. I just believe that, and not disrespecting the kind of traditional and historic roots of yoga, but I think that kind of movement and breathing and the syncing of it is really beneficial for a lot of people, and I just want to create a space where people can experience that.
And some people might think that, well, if is it still yoga anymore? And actually, the last podcast guest we had on was someone called Henika, and she actually leads courses on cultural appropriation, etc. Or actually, no, not cultural appropriation. She leads courses on cultural appreciation.
Ooh,
and she was like,
good.
actually, yoga is meant to evolve based on who the community at the time, who is participating in the session, and the needs of what's going on in that part of the world that it is being delivered. Like, and it should continue to evolve. And as long as you are respecting its traditions and the essence of what it is, then all is good. As long as you're acknowledging it.
Like that.
If you're then teaching a class saying, guys, come on, we need our abs to look better to impress, then that might be cultural appropriation and definitely not appreciation.
Yeah.
But you can, for me, like I teach yoga philosophy through the medium of dad jokes. And it works, and it meets some people where that is, it's not good for everyone, but it meets a lot of people where they're at. And I think that's a really, really positive thing. I liked what you said previously about, you almost said the cues you use, not in a class, but when you're leading
the circle, the prompts,
leading the circle, and being very sensitive to that. And I think that's a really wise thing to do, to not let there be leading questions that can go to dark places unless you're really ready to deal with that. Like not saying in Shavasana, guys, just imagine childhood and if there's any trauma that come up, and I visualize that now. And then thanks guys, namaste, see you later. Which I've experienced.
If you ask people in a women's circle, what's been a challenge for them this year, it's going to get pretty deep and dark pretty quickly. If you ask people, you know, I know it's been a hard year for people, but can you name something that you're grateful for? It's just kind of spinning them round so that you are keeping it more positive.
And then this community now that you're building and continuing to build, what was the motivating kind of force behind creating that? Like, you've got a lot on your plate, and always have done, it seems. So why did you want to create a whole nother community, a whole nother kind of retreat network, and on top of that, what else have you created? Oh, managing another social media account, which is a hassle in itself.
I spin a lot of hats now. I mean, mostly now I'm a mum. I have a 2-year-old. And when people ask me what I do, I feel like a fraud if I say anything else. But I do have a lot of other stuff going on. Rise Fierce, which basically use cold water and community as a tool to empower women, but it kind of created itself. I started sea swimming out in Ireland about probably about 10 years ago now, with a few friends, and we were just sharing it on social media, and people started tagging us saying, oh, you've inspired us to go swimming. I was living out in Ireland and we were sea swimming and doing yoga every day and growing our own food and living on an organic veg farm. And we basically just decided to make that into a retreat experience, because all these people were asking if they could come and visit and stay. So we basically put a week in the life into a yoga retreat, and it sold out and they kept selling out. And I started running day retreats where we would take people. Is that my computer pinging or yours?
I think so, yeah.
Hang on, let me see if I can close. Hold on, you can edit this out. I'm just going to shut my email account so it doesn't ping. Yeah, okay. Don't know what I was saying. Waffle.
You were saying how it actually came to be. You started running retreats and suddenly it became a thing.
So, for instance, we ran a day retreat in Plymouth and we had, I think, less than 20 people come, and we all went for a sea swim, did some yoga, had a women's circle, ate some good food, which is generally the format of the day. And I think by the end of the week, that WhatsApp group had over 100 people in it. So that's how quickly that like community grew. That kind of just happened in pockets all over the place, in London and Plymouth and Cornwall and Ireland. So yeah, the community kind of grew itself, and I've been quite bad at managing it.
Do you have anyone out? Like, do you have a team still around you? Is it still, or is it just now you?
No, it's just me trying to do like 10 jobs at once whilst raising my child.
And we'll talk about kind of parenthood in a bit, but like when you talk about kind of female empowerment in this context, what does empowerment mean for you in this context?
Oh, that's a challenging question. What does empowerment mean for me? I mean, I can talk about it in practical terms, that, as I was saying, when people come on a retreat, they think they can never get in that cold water. They can't do it. They do it and they prove to themselves they can do something hard. They can do something challenging. And the kind of confidence that gives them going forth transcends into other areas of their life. And I've had people go on retreats and, you know, then they've left a job that they hated, or they've had that conversation with their boss or with their partner, or it's just given them a sort of a confidence and literally a sense of power that they didn't know that they had within them before.
And why did you decide to focus? It might be an obvious question, but like on women's circles rather than kind of just general retreats and cold water, etc. And I know you're from, obviously, you know, surf champion, and that, I guess, that sector was quite dominated by males. And I think I read in something you in an interview you had somewhere that for so long females weren't appreciated, then they were kind of mainly appreciated in magazines for like them in being in bikinis and the like, which is never a thing in the UK. And that's evolved. So yeah, if you could talk to that.
It has been a journey. I mean, as I started off as a sponsored surfer at about 14, and I was sponsored by Roxy.
14 was it? Wow.
Yeah, I was British junior champion when I was 14. And I was sponsored by Roxy and Quicksilver for a decade. And I was modeling all through that time too. So basically my whole life was competing against women. I would paddle out in the surf and I would literally be up against 3 other women with the judge judging us who's the best. And then I would go to a modeling casting and I'd be looked up and down by someone, and they'd look up and down against the next woman. Like my whole life was competing against women, which turned out to be really unhealthy for my mental health. It wasn't good for me. And I stepped away from competing, and I stepped away from the surf industry as a whole, really. I mean, I still surf a lot, but I stepped away from fast fashion and from modeling in a bikini and from flying all over the world, and just kind of took a step back. And I spent 5 years on the west of Ireland just surfing in a wetsuit and not doing all of that. and started going to women's circles regularly out there, and started cold water swimming with women. And it just became like the transition from my whole life being about competing against women to supporting and being supported by and being held by women was just, it was like the best change ever for me. And so why I don't hold circles for everyone normally, I just don't feel ready to hold space for men. Had challenging experiences with men in my life, dads and stepdads and boyfriends and people who weren't my boyfriend. And I just at the moment don't feel comfortable to hold space for men, although I am holding a mixed retreat with somebody else next year. And we're going to do, so it's sort of like the whole, like, he runs retreats for men and I run retreats for women, and we're going to collaborate
Oh,
and
wow.
have circles together. So
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
yeah, so that's going to be
Is that released now, or is that just kind of in, like behind the scenes?
it's being released this week.
Oh, so we have to like guess who the other person is.
I can tell you, it's
Oh, go on.
fine. Do you know Anthony Mulally? He does both sides retreats.
No, maybe I will have seen it. I like
He's a
Mulally.
really
What a
similar.
cool surname.
He's an ex-pro rugby player, and I'm
Okay.
an ex-pro surfer, and he does men's and I do women's. So we're gonna collaborate together, and we're doing a retreat out in Sweden in January, which is going to be like
Cool.
ice sauna circles.
Oh, I quite fancy coming to that. That sounds
Come along.
amazing. Yeah, I think it is nice to have like separation, because like men are different around other men and vice versa. And for men at least, I think it's needed to have those circles. And men, as you say, men like women compete a lot. And I think maybe it's even more ingrained in male culture to compete in every way possible, whether that be work-wise, finances, external validators and the like. And I think that, yeah, men, I don't have any men in my life that I kind of get support from at all. I've brought it with women, like sisters, moms, nieces. All my life's been women. So I've got no men really that I would go to for any kind of support.
Yeah,
And
my partner's the same.
yeah, and it's I think it is needed to have, because and then when I am with men, maybe from like past life or on like a retreat or whatever, some weird circumstance where it's just a group of men, it's so nice especially after the first few days, when you can just be open with each other. And I think men and women need something different as well. I heard somewhere, and the numbers are completely wrong, but like a man will use 1,000 words a day, and a woman might use 10,000. Again, I'm butchering the numbers. And I think maybe men need less of the talking, more of the action, more of the small words. So I think to some degree, trying to serve both men and women as a sweeping generalization in a situation like that just can't work, and probably won't work, and won't be the best thing that either group needs.
Yeah, I definitely think, however much we're trying to live in a gender neutral society, that biologically men and women, and a part of that is society, like it's so ingrained in us to ascribe to our gender, that we are really different. And I think, in terms of women's retreats, I think for a lot of women to feel safe and to be able to speak up in that way, it does need to be a single sex. And there's plenty of research to show that women perform much better in a single sex space. And actually, the research from the men is the contrary, as far as I'm aware, that I know boys perform better in mixed schools than they do in boys' schools.
Yeah.
men are slightly better when there are a few women around it. But yeah, I agree.
I was at an all-boys school, and the girls' school was next door, and the girls always beat us, like in the leagues. They were smaller, so I guess in terms of like selection, they had a more cream of the crop, as they had a smaller number. But nonetheless, they used to beat us all the time. So let's sweep in direction now. What made you become a yoga teacher?
I never thought I would actually teach yoga. I've done a lot of yoga. Like, I did lots of yoga. I found yoga. I was living in Australia in a really unhealthy relationship, and every time I needed to get away from the guy, I just found this yoga studio down the road, and that's where I would go. So that was how I started doing yoga. And yeah, my friend owned the yoga studio out on the west of Ireland, where I was practicing all the time, and they were doing a month intensive teacher training. And I just did it to more deepen my knowledge of yoga. And I honestly think it's the best thing I ever did. Like, that month, especially now I've got a kid, like I'll never get the chance to do anything like that ever again, where you just a month of like eating organic food that was grown in the garden, and we were going swimming in the sea every day and practicing yoga and women's circles. It was absolutely amazing.
Nice. And then oh, sorry, God, something is attacking me. I'll cut this out. But we were in
What?
an attic room and we get like attic flies. Have you come
Oh,
across that as a concept? Attic flies are a thing apparently that they just emerge from somewhere at a certain time of year.
are they like little fruit flies or like big fat flies?
Quite
Oh,
juicy
I
black
hate that because
flies.
that does that mean that there's just like maggots hanging out somewhere?
Oh no, don't fuck off. Right.
Aren't flies born from maggots? I don't know. Like
Well,
not
yeah,
born
no,
from,
yeah, no, yeah.
but stem from a, and
They
then I
come
have
from
this
maggots.
fear of like once I had a van, like a little camper van. I remember opening the door one day and like 100 flies like flew out because they must have all been trapped as like little maggots in the door. Anyway.
Let's move on a little bit to yeah, away from maggots to men. No, not to men.
No.
To kind of your other career. And well, I guess you got multiple careers, but let's say one of them was you as a creative professional. Uh, and then the other side now, what to some degree is an influencer. And I think you got into influencing, with an awful term, the same way that I did, in that we've both been doing social media for a long time,
Yeah.
and we both used social media initially for purposes directly related to our career. Like I was just posting yoga content to educate the world about yoga. And then I've been doing it for so long, like 10, 11, 12 years, that
Mhm.
somehow along the line, I built up a big following, and then was getting offered money to do stuff. So what do you think your career in kind of the marketing, etc., helped you in like, with social media, or were you just doing social media independently and never saw it as a marketing thing? And then what's your approach to social media now?
Um, it's kind of funny because in a way I've been doing the same thing I've always done. When I was a sponsored surfer, I was kind of doing modeling and photo shoots and repping brands. It's just the content would end up in a magazine or on a
Mm,
billboard or on the side of a bus. And now I'm doing the same stuff literally that I've always done, but the content ends up on Instagram. And I'm exactly the same. I've just had Instagram for maybe 12 years. And it was just me posting selfies of me and my boyfriend in Disneyland or whatever to start with. And then I think I did my first paid ad about 4 years ago. So it's not like it is a really new career for me. Um, and I very much like social media for me then became a place where I wanted to um, it's a bit more political, like trying to speak up about environmentalism and sustainability. That's kind of in my righteous years what it was. And yeah, it's kind of evolved to this place where I make half of my income now, which is pretty wild.
and are you comfortable with that?
I am, look, in the same way I never felt confident saying I'm a model or I'm a pro surfer, and I was never proud of that title. I feel the same about influencing, and I feel like Instagram could just come up, be out of fashion tomorrow, or could die, or someone
Mm.
could hack my account, and all of that would be gone. So it's really important to me that I have other avenues of income to pay my mortgage and feed my child, and that I do stuff that feels more fulfilling for me
And
than just that.
have you tried to make social media fulfilling? 'Cause I have some of the same problems that you do in that I think, number one, I'm not in vogue, particularly at the moment. Like middle-aged, straight white guy. Like I'm not as in fashion as I used
Mhm.
to, used to be for social
I'm
media
not.
companies.
Yeah, I'm not that. No one wants a 37-year-old mum of a 2-year-old to
Although
do
you
it.
beat me to a campaign recently, there was a sauna thing in what's it called in King's Cross,
Oh yeah.
and I was like one of the last few people apparently, and I put in my bid, and then I suddenly saw like two or three of you like doing it. I was like, oh, beat me, taking money out of my child's mouth.
So, sorry guys. Roll
uh,
that one.
but you know, so the what I wonder is like, have you tried, or do you think it's worth making social media fulfilling for its own sake? So when I do posts, as an example, some are for entertainment, but
Hmm.
some are at least, let's say 50%. I try and make posts that if I were to look back at them in 10 years, I think I've added something to the world.
Yeah.
So even if it was to go, at least I'm doing something. And even the comical ones, the
Yeah.
copy underneath it is still educational, inspirational, or like,
I do hate content for content's sake and just like filling the internet up with more shit. Just like, why are we doing that? And yes, I do definitely see value and purpose in using social media for good. And in fact, my dissertation at university was how to use social media to create positive change in society. And that was many, many, many years ago. So I was a bit ahead of the trend on
Hmm.
social media there because I did it and social media jobs did not exist when I did that dissertation. And also, yeah, my Instagram's a bit of a diary for my life. I've got pretty bad memory and in some parts of my life, like amnesia, due to like I don't remember big chunks of my life, but I can look back at Instagram and it's like that's actually how I know where I was at certain times and places. It's like a nice little diary. But yeah, I hate that Instagram has now the default setting is that they won't show political content. It just makes no sense to me. Everything is political. The air we breathe is political. The water we swim in, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, childcare, like everything is political and it affects all of us. And Instagram's just blocking it.
In
So,
what sense is it blocking it? I'm kind of uninformed on that.
oh, you have not changed your settings. So the Instagram have brought in a new thing in the settings that if you haven't changed it, if you go into your Instagram settings, political content will be blocked. So you need to go into your settings and manually unblock political content or you won't see anything. So you won't
Ah.
see. So my engagement now on Instagram is terrible because, you know, I speak up about a lot of things, but since October 7th, I've been speaking up a lot about Gaza. I speak about the sewage, which has personally affected me. You know, I spent a month in hospital and lost 20% of my lung capacity after getting sewage in my lung. And my mum is currently just been poisoned by Southwest Water and is really poorly. And I speak about a lot of things that are political, but it's not getting engagement on Instagram because Instagram has default blocked political content.
How are they defining political content?
That that is that is what I don't know because to me everything's political. Like literally everything is political,
Yeah.
unless we're, I don't know.
I wonder if it's keywords perhaps or accounts they associate with politics, like pure politics accounts. I wonder.
Yeah, for sure.
'Cause
If you're using the word genocide at the minute, you're getting blocked.
yeah, it's a hard to do. I think getting the message across and also being savvy with how you do it. Because I've tried to talk about topics before and people will
About
tolerate
what? Sorry,
just a topic, like a
a topic.
political,
Yeah.
let's say, like a generic political topic or a topic where there could be deeper discussion on it.
Hmm.
And, a first story might do well, but then people tune off quite quick.
Mm.
And then if I do four in a row, then they never get seen. Then the final four never get seen, and then it dumps me down in the algorithm, and then it's like this vicious cycle. So it's almost like you need to, even before this thing that is new to me, you needed to be so careful of like just splatting it in somewhere. Okay, like just throwing it occasionally, and then just hoping some of it sticks, but not throwing too much shit at the window at the same time. I just little bits.
Yeah, and I just find, I want to be. I hate the word authentic. I think it's so overused, but like I want to be true to myself, and I want to speak
Mm,
up about things that are important, and I don't want to not do that because I'm scared the algorithm will punish me, or I'm scared people won't engage in my content. Like it just doesn't feel right to me. But at the same
mm.
time, I make money off of Instagram, and I have a mortgage, and I come from a working class background, and I don't have any financial backup, so I can't just sacrifice my platform to the political good, but I'm trying to balance it in some way.
It's a really interesting kind of moral dilemma as well, because let's say you want to be authentic and you want to just put out there the stuff that really means a lot to you, and then you say, you might want to advocate change, and yet so that actually what you would love to do is every post be about a topic. I'm not saying you particularly, but like for someone that wants to make change, you want every post to be about that topic, but
Mhm.
then that actually the algorithm will punish that, and so morally, is it right for, let's say, 80% of your posts to be engaging and funny about something else, knowing that then the one that is political will get 10 times the reach that it would have if you just kept doing everything? But it's a hard one to navigate, isn't it?
Unbalanced.
Yeah, completely. And I get the guilty influencer to some degree syndrome, in that people will say to me, like, something's happened in the world. They will write, why aren't you writing about that? Why aren't you commenting
Mm.
about that? And I get that quite a lot. And I just generally keep fairly stum about certain things,
Yeah.
because for me, at least, I don't believe I have the knowledge on certain topics. I don't want to give a big opinion because I don't really feel like I know enough about certain topics. But quite a lot of people will say to me, why aren't I speaking on it? And I would rather, me personally, would rather not, unless something is in my strong realm of knowledge.
Yeah, I think that that's if you're comfortable explaining why you're staying in your lane, then you stay in your lane and you tell them that's why, right?
Yeah, and
And I do think it's, to some extent staying, I will speak about water pollution and sewage and plastic pollution, and I can, and and feminism and things that have directly affected me. But yeah, there's probably a lot of topics I don't talk up about as well because I'm not educated in them.
So yeah, I did see that you were in hospital, and I remember seeing lots of stories about you being under bright lights. So
Yeah.
what happened there in terms of the poisoning?
So this time it wasn't, but so when I was 18, I was
Oh,
surfing and I got sewage in my lung and I spent a month in hospital. Well, it was actually, yeah, I missed my 18th birthday and all my A levels at school and my prom and nearly died. And the effect is that I lost 20% of my left lung um, due to dirty water. And I've had pneumonia in that lung 3 times now. So
oh
this
God.
year again, I was hit with pneumonia and I was in hospital again with my shitty lung. But
And
yeah,
what is being done about this?
I mean, the government, again, do you want me to be political? The
Yeah, no,
government,
no, be political. Yeah, yeah.
well, the government are doing absolutely nothing to uphold the law. The water companies are prioritizing profit and shareholders over legislation. And since we left the EU, we are no longer, we don't have to meet those EU water legislations. So our water quality is now even worse since Brexit. Um, you know, I think the current legislation is that the water companies can have discharge like overflow sewage in exceptional circumstances, but that isn't what's happening at my local beach. We have had 21 sewage discharges this year already, so that's 21 times that raw sewage has been pumped into the ocean and it's been unsafe to swim for 48 hours. Like that's not exceptional circumstances. That's just every time it rains, we're throwing the sewage in the sea.
And in terms of,
And we're seeing the result literally in South Devon at the minute. There's the tap water is poisoning people. So sure, I'm throwing a load of shit and it doesn't help.
and in terms of what we can do, like regardless, we can put pressure on the water companies, but and obviously there's lots of cleanup operations going on. And am I right to say, the cleanup can happen with plastics and alike, but the average person can't help clean up sewage. We can only
Take a
do
net into the sea and scoop up some.
yes, yeah.
I mean, for me, like that's why voting is so important. And I think, as I said earlier, I think politics affects all of us, even if we don't realize. I think as soon as you realize that actually the air you are breathing is political, how dirty is that air? Is it
Mm.
harming your health? The water that we swim in, the food we eat, the clothes we wear, everything. As soon as you realize that everything in your life is political, you start to realize how important your vote is. And in the voting booth, we're all the same, whether you're a man or a woman or whoever you are, a vote is a vote. And I think if
Mm.
everyone realized how powerful that vote was, we would have a much more diverse and feminist government and things would change. But at the minute, the government's just letting the water companies get away with it.
And do you find, like in a selfish way, but not selfish, that it's affecting people that want to participate in kind of open water swimming and are like, and not only
Yeah.
to come along to your stuff, but like I've always been where, well, not always, but in the last few years been wary of rivers because I know how polluted rivers are. And even though there's one near me that people called the Splash, that people, there's photos of
Sounds
people
great.
splashing in it. Yeah, it sounds wonderful. And it actually looks wonderful. And I was tempted when I first moved to the area to bring like a lilo and just chill out in the splash, but decided against it. Now knowing how dirty it is and actually how there are regular warnings saying do not get in the water. And so now my only kind of water exposure is my ice bath, really, or like
And isn't that sad that you feel like nature is a no-go zone? Because there's so many benefits to just immersing and being in nature. Like the whole concept of blue health and just being next to water, let alone being in it, being good for your
mm,
health. And because of the pollution, you're feeling like you can't go into those areas. And yeah, I met I was filming something with Greenpeace in London this week, and the girl who was filming said she likes the idea of cold water swimming, but the more and more she sees about the water quality, the more and more she just thinks no. So yeah, it is a physical barrier that is stopping people doing water sports.
and is it stopping you at all?
I mean, as you can tell, I have sniffed sewage and been in hospital, so I'm pretty loose with it.
Yeah.
I generally don't swallow the water, have a shower straight afterwards. If it's been really heavy rain, probably avoid that spot for 24 hours, 48 hours. There's an app called Safer Seas that's run by Surfers Against Sewage, which is brilliant for the beach. It gives you live updates on whether there's a sewage discharge, but nothing like that exists for rivers and lakes and quarries and other waterways. So it's much more challenging for you to know when your water is clean to swim in.
It's so sad. And are I don't do any open water swimming particularly. Not through the fact I don't want to. I just time dadding. There is like a lovely open water swimming not far from me. Just can't get to it. Uh, is there a similar problem in lakes? I know that in lakes there wouldn't be so much of like sewage from water companies, but there would be a lot of farm sewage, I guess, and lots of runoff from
Yeah,
farms.
lots of runoff. I actually don't know the details, but I know that Lake Windermere was all over the news yesterday after sewage discharge into Lake Windermere. So the lakes absolutely are affected by sewage.
Oh God! And so the only thing we can really do about it is shower ourselves, and vote.
Vote, you go use your vote. We've got a general election, hopefully this year. Go and vote
And
wisely,
which,
everybody.
from your knowledge, which parties beyond the obvious are willing to do the most?
Um, I mean, I don't want to tell people who to vote for, but I will just say when you're voting, vote with the climate in mind. And it seems pretty obvious to me that if we fuck up our natural world, we won't have a world to live in, and all the other policies become irrelevant. So, yeah, to me, the climate and the natural world is a very important element of voting.
Now, parenthood. So you now mainly label yourself the mom. The mom is your noun of choice at the moment. Like, has parenting been different to what you expected? Like, I guess pre-child, you might have thought, maybe I want to work more to provide for the child, or maybe I just want to like stay at home and be a mom. Like, is it different to what you expected? And if so, how?
Yeah. Do you know what? The main way in which parenting is different to how I expected is the amount of joy it brings.
Mm,
Everyone talks about it, the terrible twos and tantrums. It's so time consuming, it's so expensive, and there's sleepless nights, and you just hear all this negative stuff. And I had no idea how much it would fill my soul to hear my child laughing. Like it is just amazing. Like being his mum is amazing. And it's also incredibly time consuming.
mm.
And it makes getting anything else done very hard. But yeah, it has changed my life far more than I thought it would. I went back to work and running retreats. I'm self-employed, so when he was 4 months old, I was back to running retreats. Went off to run a retreat in Wales when he was 6 months old. I just had to crack on with it. But actually now, the last few months, I have really stepped away from working, and I've had that realization that he's only young once, and this time is going to be so fleeting. And in 2 years he'll be in school and we'll never spend this much time together ever again. So actually, although it has given me a huge identity crisis, and like I'm not a surfer and I'm not a swimmer and I don't all these things that I've attached my identity to, I'm not them anymore. I'm just at home being a mum. I shouldn't say just being a mum, it's an important job. I'm at home being a mum, but it's also the most important job I have right now, and probably the most important job I'll ever have.
Mhm. I feel exactly the same way as a dad. I didn't know which way it could go, and all I want to do is be with him all the time. That's it. And and all I always say to people is just because you don't like other people's kids doesn't mean you won't like your own. Like I don't really like that many people's kids,
No, me
particularly.
neither. I
I'm
didn't even know
more,
if I wanted a kid.
and I
I was
think a lot of
lucky
people are
enough
in
it
that
worked
boat,
out.
and then leave it so long they then don't have a choice. It's
Mhm.
and I think society sometimes, maybe in the bubble that I'm in, is very like, don't have kids. You don't need kids. You can be happy by yourself, which is you can of course be, but it's almost at least I see a movement almost against having kids and advocating for not.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just want people to know, and everyone's so different, but for you, it's the greatest joy, like looking into like my little toddler's eyes and him explaining something. He's holding a Power Ranger and then giggling and like I just
How old's your kid? One and a bit.
what he's going to be 2 years in August. Yeah.
Oh, then okay. So not my kid. Mine's 5 months older than yours.
Okay. Yeah. So it's a wonderful age. Like they can't really speak fully, but they're doing sentences and he's
Oh.
really physical. And it's just I just want to be with him constantly. And it is hard. Like I this week, well, at the start of the conversation, even know what day it was when I just spoke to you. I've had not a lot of sleep because I want to when I'm with him, I'm with him. I'm not doing other stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to make sure Holly has the time to do everything she needs to do. And then for me to get stuff done, sometimes they end up being up till like 1 o'clock in the morning, and then waking up for a feed if he wants to feed, and then getting up at 5 o'clock when he's up. And so like, this week's been really sleep deprived.
Yeah.
There's not one thing I change about it. It's
Yeah.
just the most.
I see a lot of the movement away from having children. And I do have to say, I think if I had never had a child, I still think my life would be fulfilled and I'd have joy and I'd be happy. I don't think I think I would have a really happy life without a child, but I really underestimated the amount of joy he would bring to me. And there's obviously a lot of people out there who desperately want children and can't have, so just acknowledging that as well.
Yeah, no, completely. Like if I saw a little meme today, which was a sad old man sitting in a very clean house.
Was it a picture of yourself? No.
Yeah. so many grey hairs now. So many grey hairs. And it was saying that the text underneath was, you wish for a clean, tidy house for so long.
Yeah.
And then the moment your house is clean and tidy and empty, all you wish is the people that made a mess to come back and mess it all up again.
I think that every day, just like now is the time for plastic cars to be all over the house and the house to be a mess and the dishes not to be done. It's just, I get sad so often thinking about one day he'll have moved out and left us and the house will be clean and tidy and we'll have loads of free time. And that makes me a bit sad.
What keeps you ticking physically? So you're swimming, surfing a little bit less. I think I saw you have access to like a chilled ice bath and lots of running as well.
Yeah, I run a lot, not so much because running is my sport, but because it's a sport I can do with my child. So he comes in the buggy and we run, I can get a 10K done with him in the buggy. So running the last 2 years I've run a lot more. I used to play a lot of football. I don't do that anymore because I don't want to risk injuring myself. Now I have much more responsibilities. But yeah, I love surfing. I love swimming. Just movement. And my work involves, I teach baby and preschool swim lessons as well. So even my work is I'm in the water, playing, moving.
I'm going to get some free advice off you then. Our little boy hasn't had formal swimming lessons. Okay,
oh, yeah.
he had one or two very early on, and we just didn't have space or time, amongst other things, to get him to more. He's been in lots of pools where we've like thrown him up and down and like. So as I said at the beginning of this, we're going to be taking him to a pool for the next week. We bought a little jacket for him for the first time. Any little tips? Is a throwing him in a tactic that we should follow?
Absolutely not. There's a big study called Sink or Swim, I think it's titled, but basically the research shows that forced submersion, so when you force your kid to go under the water, that actually leads to them just not liking swimming in later life, like it's a negative association. So you just really follow their lead. If they want to go under, cool. My kid's just getting a bit braver now that when he jumps in, he'll get his face wet and like sometimes go under a little bit. A lot of it's just about being relaxed and happy and having fun and playing in the water. So get your face wet and show them it's not a problem. Stick your face in, smile and laugh and show them it's not a problem. If you're there going, oh, water in my eyes, oh, don't get my hair wet, don't smudge my mascara, then they're gonna pick up on all of that from you. But and also, like, I know this goes against me having a business where I teach kids swimming lesson, but at the age your kid is now, swimming lessons aren't essential. They're so expensive. If you're taking him swimming in the water and he's enjoying it and he's comfortable, just carry on doing that. And actually, like, maybe when he's 3 or 4, that's when you want to start leading them towards swimming more independently. So that when they're 5, the aim is that they can go in the pool without an adult then. But like at this age, just have fun, just go and play.
And it's amazing, I think, the tolerance they have to cold. Like so many times our little boy's like screaming to stay in, like he really wants to stay in but he's blue.
Yeah.
Like, can you not you're not cold? Why on earth do you want to like, jump back in? Or we were at some like kids party. That's what we do now. Go to kids parties, and all the older kids were running in under this hose, which was a flower that was spraying water everywhere. And all the older kids kind of had long abandoned it, and our little boy was just still like putting it in his mouth, like 20 minutes later, and blue lips. It's
that's my baby
normal
technique while we do this podcast. If my child wakes up, if you turn on the hose pipe, that gives you at least an hour of free time.
Oh, in what sense?
He'll just stand there spraying the hose pipe like an hour in the garden. waste
And
waste of
sewage,
water, sorry.
and sewage within. And then drinking from the hose pipe, which is probably covered in
Oh,
fox poo.
he was just drinking out of his mud kitchen. And it was full of like dead flies. I was like, oh dear.
And
Anyway.
tell us a little bit, like some quick fires now, some quick fires before you head off. Uh, if you want to persuade someone to do either ice baths or cold swimming, what would you say is the main benefit they would get from it?
Look, there's loads of health benefits, and science is proving that now. It boosts your immune system and reduces stress and improves your mental health and mood, and it can slow the onset of dementia. But for me, it's not about any of those health benefits. It's just that post swim or post ice joy. So I just think give it a go. If you hate it, you never have to do it ever again. And you never know, you might love it.
That's what I'm doing straight off this podcast. I got delivered a sauna tent the other day from a company called Bast.
Ooh.
This is a Swedish company that are launching in the UK, and I've just burnt off the sauna, like all the chemicals off it, and I'm about to erect the tent this afternoon and do some contrast therapy.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous.
I
It's like
want it.
my absolute dream is to have
Oh,
a sauna in the garden.
and it was my dream, and I thought it's completely unachievable. But this sauna tent is, I think if they were to sell it, I got gifted it, but I think it's £1.5 grand.
Yeah.
But it's like the perfect solution, and it's something you could even take with you like to the beach, and that's what they do. They take it to the beach, etc. Anyway, next one. 2 brands that you love at the moment that are good for the world.
Finisterre, they're a surf company based down here in Cornwall, and they send to People Product Planet. So they are, for instance, making Ulux wetsuits, which are made out of plants instead of chlorinated, toxic, awful materials that come from Cancer Alley. And I'm going to say Mother of Pearl, which is a fashion brand, but Amy Powney, the creative director, is amazing. And again, they're sustainable and ethical, and they're really rethinking supply chain. Her film came out last year called Fashion Reimagined, and I think it's a really important watch for anybody who wears clothes.
That sounds amazing, but I feel like their company name is very non-searchable, like not Google friendly.
Mother
Like
of
if you,
Pearl, yeah,
yeah,
not that, yeah. True that.
bless her. So what if people want to find them? Like, what's their Instagram? Do you know what it offhand?
I think it's just Mother of Pearl.
But they've got Mother of Pearl.
Hang on, let me see.
No,
Right.
they would have had to pay a lot for that. And by the sound of it, they're not like rolling
You have
in
to
money.
buy it. They have Mother of Pearl. That is their thing.
Amazing.
And the film is called Fashion Reimagined. So if you wear clothes and have an interest in sort of ethical, sustainable production of clothes, I recommend watching that.
And then it can be political, it can be, or it can be about anything. Any book that you're reading or have read or podcast that you're really vibing with at the moment.
Ooh, I love podcasts and I love books. And when someone asks me for one, oh, hang on, let me go my little podcast app. What have I listened to this week? This isn't really fast, is it?
While you're searching, when do you listen to them?
I listen to podcasts all the time when I run, when I drive, when I'm going to bed. I've got like those bone conductor headphones that aftershocks, they're
I
amazing.
know what you mean.
You can hear stuff and hear the podcast.
I find I got a vibration when I wore them. It might be because I broke my jaw,
Oh.
so like from boxing so many times. But like when I wore them, it felt really like for them to be loud enough for me to hear. My jaw was vibrating. Like it felt really weird. Maybe that's just me.
Podcast recommendations. Okay, just Newscast is one I always listen to, and it's really good to stay. They make current affairs and politics very accessible for people who don't understand politics.
Nice, awesome. And what have you got going on soon? It sounds like you've got a quiet time coming up at the moment, but anything you want to promote, and where can people find you?
I'm going to be hosting a Women's Day at the Wave in Bristol, which is going to be surf, yoga, women's circle, and some good food. I've got a mixed retreat coming up in Sweden. I'm teaching a couple of events, teaching kind of breathwork and cold water. But yeah, mostly on my social media, Sophie Hellyer, or my website's risefierce.com. And I very rarely send out a newsletter, but if you sign up to it, then like once a year, I might send one out with some important information.
And as a final question, what do you want more of in your life at the moment?
Oh, I think I made it my like thing for this year, peace and joy. Like I just want calm. I want calmness, which I have 5 jobs and a toddler, so good luck, but calm and joy, just finding happiness in peaceful moments.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Honestly unbalanced.